Hey y'all. So this is a video I've been wanting to do for a while. Um, it's kind of hard to talk about. Um, I've been debating whether or not I should talk about it. But I think it's really important to share our stories, no matter how hard they are, and I'm nervous doing this. Um, I wrote like a loose script, but it's still hard to talk about. Also, huge content warning over this whole thing, because I'm going to be talking about some stuff that, I'm going to be talking about mental health issues and suicide, and some violence, uh, interpersonal violence. Um, so yeah, content warning, and yeah, so I think it's important to tell my story, uh, because I think that's good feminist praxis, to be open and honest and share our stories and try to learn from each other's experiences and share what I learned from my own experience. So let's get into the main story here then. So my memory is pretty bad, so I don't remember all the exact timeline, but when it was a couple years ago, um, I think maybe as early as 2015, but maybe 2016, I started having really bad, I don't even know what you would call it. I was hearing voices in my head, I guess that's what I called it at the time. I was pretty scared. I thought I was developing schizophrenia, but that turned out not to be the case. And to cope with that, I started using lots of cannabis, smoking a lot, and I was also dealing with a lot of like normal life stress at the time too. Like working in school and interpersonal relationships and things. So I developed a pretty bad cannabis habit. I would say that I was addicted, um, and I was using it because I thought that it was helping me cope. But in retrospect, I see that it was actually making everything a lot worse. So, like, it was making everything worse in regards to my weird experience that I was having with the voices, um, because it is a hallucinogen, and I can't smoke it anymore now, uh, because if I do, I get pretty weird. Um, so yeah, I was smoking a lot, and my mental health was getting worse and worse. I had these, there was a couple of different voices actually, and one of them was really bad. Uh, I don't know if I named it or like, in my head, like, I'm just going to use pronouns because it's easier. I don't know if I named her or she named herself, um, but I called her Anna, and she was, yeesh, I don't even know how to explain it, very, very bad person. Um, yeah, it's hard to talk about because I don't really have the words for it. All I have is the words that I used at the time. Um, I talked to an online therapist about it, which is a bad idea. Don't ever do that. Go see someone in person. Um, but the online therapist told me that I probably had dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personalities, So that's what I thought I was dealing with at the time. So yeah, that probably made everything a lot worse because uh, I conceptualized it as this like permanent thing that was like wrong with me that I couldn't do anything about. That I had these other people in my head, um, and so that probably made it worse. Uh, there was all of this like fighting in my own head between these different personalities that it was just really chaotic and like really hard to deal with when you think that you're like five different people who all want different things. Um, so I guess it was a very extreme identity crisis that manifested as like split personalities. So the split personality thing is like I really believed that's what was going on with me at the time. So I guess I should talk more specifically about the like infighting type of thing that was going on in my head. Um, one of the personalities, named Anna, was a violent person, uh, and she would insult me and say all kinds of things about me and make me feel terrible and like order me to do things. And I had this problem of intrusive thoughts at the time too that I attributed to her, like as if she had psychic powers to like make me see things that I didn't want to see, like violent imagery and that kind of thing, like really like gruesome images, very disturbing. Um, which the whole thing like it really fucked with my sense of self. Like I didn't really know who I was, if I was me or if I was these other people or what. Um, which is not a good way to live. You know, feeling like the very core of your person is like unstable. Over the course of a few years, um, it just kept getting like worse and worse, and like more personalities started like manifesting. Um, there's one personality named Lek who was like, I don't know, a hedonist, I guess, and like didn't care about anything except like fucking and like binge eating and doing drugs and stuff. Um, and there was like other like minor ones that I mean it like my memory is really bad from the whole thing because it was dissociative, and the smoking weed definitely makes that worse if you get dissociative. I mean, I shouldn't like generalize, but like that's how it was for me. So yeah, memory's an issue. I don't really remember everything that went on in my head over that fairly long period of time. Um, but yeah, there was like 5 or 6 personalities like fighting for. That was the thing. They were all like fighting over for control of my body because they all wanted to do different things with my body. Um, so it was like this, like existential struggle, like I felt like I was like fighting off like demons that wanted to possess me. I guess is the uh, like supernatural allegory for that. Um, and yeah, just really bad dissociative episodes where I lost like huge chunks of time in my memory. Um, and when I did just switch is what they call it if you actually have DID, which I don't. I know that I don't, um, but I don't know what else to call it because I actually did kind of switch. Like people would tell me that I would act like really, really differently, and I wouldn't remember it. Um, and I did do some. Well, I did one really, really terrible thing, and I did some other like minor bad things. Uh, but after I got sober and uh, after a while, my memories started coming back. Um, so I remember a lot of the things that happened. Um, I especially remember the really terrible thing that happened, which is the most hard thing for me to talk about. Um, but I do think it's important because, like I said, I've been in jail and I've been pretty vague about why I got arrested. Um, so, in the summer of 2017, in June, uh, I was in full crisis mode. Like, binge smoking, like, multiple times a day, um, just to deal with all the stress. And uh, I got in an argument with my family, um, and I just, like, the way that I conceptualized it at the time was that, like, my psyche was weakened, um, so it was easier for the other personalities to sort of, like, take over and do their own thing. Um, there's still, like, like, most of, like, the month or two before uh, this thing happened, I don't remember. Um, so when I was in crisis, um, I believed that I was a different person. I believed that I was Anna, and her personality is very combative and, like, domination oriented. Um, and I got into an argument. Uh, it was about something stupid. I don't remember exactly. Something really minor. Uh, but when Anna got in an argument, she always had to win and make sure that everybody knew that she's the best and the greatest. And she also wanted people to be scared of her. Um, and they weren't scared of her because she was me, and I'm not a very scary person. Um, they didn't really understand, like, I mean, of course you can't understand what someone's going through in their own head, you know? It's it's even hard for me to, like, explain it the way that I was thinking, because I remember everything that happened, um, which is weird because it's, like, the most traumatic thing, but I still remember it, and I can't remember other little, like, minor stuff. Um, but so when I thought I was Anna, I wanted my family to be afraid of me, so I got a knife and I cut my arm to, like prove to them that I was, like, oh, serious, you know, like, you better do what I say or else, type of thing. Um, and then that didn't work. My brother, of course, he was concerned for me and for his own safety, but he did something that was a very bad decision, in my opinion. He pushed me up against a wall and tried to get the knife out of my hand, which I know he was doing it just, you know, for everyone's safety, but, when someone's psychotic, you don't push them up against a wall, and, like, I don't know, so, he didn't get the knife out of my hand, and I ended up, stabbing him, which I feel horrible about, obviously. Um, but he's okay. He's alright. He was in the hospital for like a day or something, and he was okay. Um, but now he won't talk to me, and he has a restraining order against me. And after I caught him, um, I just completely like broke down, and I tried to uh, kill myself. I tried to cut my neck open with the knife, but I couldn't do it. So I decided to, we used to live near the freeway, so I decided to run to the freeway and try to jump in front of a car. But by that time, my mom had already called the police, and the police were there, and they stopped me. And they beat me up. They threw me on the ground, and I was still bleeding from my neck, bleeding from my arm. Um, oh yeah, when I saw the cops, I tried to get them to shoot me because I really just wanted to die in that moment. So I did punch a police officer in the face to try to get her to shoot me, but she didn't, which I'm glad for now. But they did beat me up and throw me on the ground. And then I went to the hospital to get treated for my wounds, and then I spent a year in jail for that. So, switching gears here, I want to talk about the identity crisis aspect of my crisis. Uh, it it had been suggested to me before the crisis that possibly me starting my transition around the same time had something to do with, the split personality thing, and I was very resistant to that idea because I didn't want my transgender identity to be pathologized, right? So I resisted that completely, but recently I watched a really, really good video from Sarah on her channel, Let's Talk About Stuff. The video is called Transition. I'll link it in the thing if I can figure out how to do that. So I watched that video, and it really made me consider the possibility that, yes, my transition did have something to do with the way that I was feeling at the time. Because my split personalities, I guess, each of them did have some ideal quality that I wanted in myself. So it was kind of like each of them was my ideal self in some type of way, but they also each had a lot of flaws, which I think may have been my own. I mean, all of it was in my head. It was all, I mean, I don't want to say it was made up, but it came from my imagination, basically, but it felt completely real, like these were real people that I didn't have any control over. But I think their flaws were me trying to cope with not being my ideal self, oh, I don't want to be like that person because they're like that. Like, I'm fine the way I am, you know, but obviously I wasn't, and it's, well, it's weird, like, now that to steal terminology from the DID community, now that I've integrated all of my split stuff, it is really interesting the way that I conceptualize my ideal future self compared to the person that I am now, because I like myself, I do, but, you know, life is about continual improvement, and, you know, an ideal is something that you reach for, that you strive for, that you won't get to, and that's what I'm doing. Like, I am myself, but myself is a process over time, you know, and before, when, how old am I now? 23. When I was 20, I guess, I was thinking that, like, okay, I finally figured out who I'm going to be for the rest of my life, and it's good. I gotta hold on to that, and not let it go, and make sure that I stay as good as I am now, and not backslide, which I think is actually, like, a toxic way to think, because if you don't open yourself up to change, then you stagnate. It's the definition of not changing. But it also, what am I saying? I didn't script this part. I don't know, change is important. Like change itself is an ideal, I think, that people should live up to, you know? Like, we shouldn't be complacent. Like, we should always believe that things can get better, no matter how bad or how good it is already, you know? It could always get better. And I didn't really believe that. I mean, I guess I believed it, like intellectually, you know, like logically, of course, but I didn't feel it, you know what I mean? It wasn't part of me. Like, that belief didn't really, like, motivate me as a person. It didn't drive me. But I think now it does. And I have, I think I have now embodied some of those ideal traits from my split personalities, but I've also, like, accepted the flaws, and accepted that I am flawed, and, you know, working on your flaws and improving your skills is just, you know, that's part of life. It's a process, it's change. So now I think I'm fully living that, but I don't want to get complacent in that. Like, I want to remain open to the way that I live changing again. And I don't know, I'm kind of just rambling. I didn't plan to say any of that. So now I have to address this thing, which is an actual thing that some people have a problem with. Like, I advocate for prison abolition. Abolish the prison system, abolish the police. And some people's, like, gut reaction to that is like, oh, well, then people will just murder each other, and no one will be held responsible for the evil shit that they do. And there are some shitty people who are usually cis guys. Not trying to say that cis guys are inherently bad, but it is a thing that I've noticed that mostly the people who kind of hide behind like radical politics and like prison abolition and stuff like that are maybe like primarily or otherwise just kind of like latching onto that to hide behind that to excuse their shittiness, which I have seen people do in person, and like I've heard stories and stuff. Like the Dr. Bones thing, I guess, is something like that. I don't know anything about it, but I've heard lots of stories about that type of thing. Usually cis guys doing shitty things and basically hiding behind the fact that radical people usually won't call the cops on someone, and just like getting away with doing shitty stuff. But you know, that does happen, and we do have to call it out, and we can't let them do that. So anyway, I wanted to say that I'm not one of those people. I do take full responsibility for all of the terrible things that I've done, even though I don't. I mean, the really bad thing, the violence against my brother, I don't have any way to like fix that because he won't talk to me. But I would, absolutely, I would do everything I could to make it up to him. But the point that I'm struggling towards here is that we don't need prisons or anything like that. We don't need punishment in general to be able to hold people accountable for bad shit. So yeah, I did do a bad thing, but and I did a violent thing, but does that justify violence against me as a person? I don't think so. I completely disagree with that. Like, there's that old saying that comes to my mind, like, two wrongs don't make a right, you know what I mean? Which I don't know how valuable that is, but I think it's true in this case. My point is that, yes, I did a bad thing. Yes, I needed to get sober. I needed help. I needed help with what I was going through. And I did get sober in jail. I didn't have a choice about that. And I did have lots of time. I mean, it was very stressful in there, but I didn't really have any responsibilities while I was in there. So I had lots of time to myself to, like, get sober, like, reintegrate my memories, like, remember shit, and just think about shit and, like, analyze myself, which are good things, but you don't need a jail to do that. It would have been much better for me, especially considering that being in jail, like, drastically increased the severity of my depression and, like, the frequency of panic attacks. It was very bad for my mental health, like, overall, but in one instance, it was good because I got to get sober. But a much better option would be something like a voluntary hospital type thing where you can leave whenever you want and you just go there when you need time. And if you're, like, psychotic like I was and you don't really know what you need to like, get better, then it's up to the community, your friends, the people around you to like, to what exactly? I don't know, help in any way they can. Like, try to persuade you that there is something wrong and that you do need help and that there are places that can help you. But we don't really have places like that, so that wouldn't really work now unless you live in a large metropolitan area, I guess, with lots of people, and a small group of people have gotten together to like create this thing that we don't have, this safe place, I guess, for I don't know what you would call it, but yeah, a safe place to, recuperate mental health, and ideally like have psychological professionals. Like, I'm against the like psychology and psychiatric industry, but individual people who have those skills are very valuable, and they do valuable work, they do valuable labor that we need, and that they should be compensated for, just like any other type of labor. So that's what we need. We don't need prisons or jails or police to threaten people into being good, or to punish people for being bad. We need systems, we need networks of people who genuinely want to help and know what's wrong with somebody and what can be done to like help them like feel better about themselves and cope with stress in healthier ways, and just safe places for people to go when they're having really, really hard times, Like, that's what I needed when I was having a really hard time, and that wasn't available to me. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until a terrible thing happened. And there's no institution or thing for me to like fall back on. I had to work, I had to keep going to school, or else I would get like like fail all my classes. And we need to do better. We need people who actually care, not cops, because cops don't care. Cops care about a paycheck. And we need to help people, because people aren't getting helped. Like, I made it out okay. I'm stable, I guess. I'm sober. But I had to do all that myself while I was in a really shitty, really terrible place to be in. It was cold and uncomfortable, like both literally and metaphorically, and it was just terrible all around. Like, the place itself didn't help me do those things. I helped myself in spite of being there. And it's just terrible, like, what we do to people. I saw so many people in there who were in such crisis that they couldn't help themselves, they didn't know how, and they weren't getting any help. And they were getting pills, but fucking pills don't do anything. I mean, not really. Not unless you have an actual, like, chemical thing in your brain, which I don't think is really common. But I don't know how to end this, so I'll just say, yeah, we need to do better. Fucking go out there and build, create a system, an institution, an organization of people who actually care and want to help. And, like, that's revolutionary right there. Yeah, just do it. Just fucking help people. Help your friends, help your family, like, and if you need help, like, be open about it. And if you think that your friend needs help, like, ask them. We have to communicate and be open about stuff and be willing to help each other. That's what we need.